there are still people in the world who believe that their definition, their preferences, their views must override everything else. So, since you mentioned this specific example, I don't know how familiar people are with what was said at the Munich conference. Essentially, Mr. Soros said India is a democratic country, but he doesn't think the Prime Minister of India is a Democrat. By the way, a few years ago, in the same conference, I was there at that time, he actually accused us of planning to strip millions of Muslims of their citizenship, which of course didn't happen. It was a ridiculous suggestion. But you have to understand what this actually means. I could take a view that the individual in question, Mr. Soros, is a old, rich, opinionated person sitting in New York who still thinks that his views should determine how the entire world works. Now, if I could only stop at old, rich and opinionated, I would put it away. But he is old, rich, opinionated and dangerous, because what happens is when such people and such views and such organizations, they actually invest resources in shaping narratives. I spoke about globalization. Now, what globalization does is it actually creates lot of the seamlessness of globalization, which creates all the opportunities, also allows narratives to be shaped, money to come in, foundations to go about their agenda. Now, in this particular case, it is very clear that he has very strong political preferences. He actually thinks that, doesn't matter that this is a country of 1.4 billion people, we are almost there, whose voters decide how the country should run. He actually thinks, well, if, and again, I cite him as an extreme example, okay? But there are other, manifestations of this in different countries, where people like him think an election is good if the person we want to see wins. If the election throws up a different outcome, then we actually will say it's a flawed democracy. This to my and the beauty is all this is done under the pretense of advocacy of open society, of transparency, etc. So, our generation, we have grown up with concepts like regime change, which influence operations. Now, you can call it what you will. To me, this really looks the same with a gloss of some kind of do-goodism on it. So, for me, it's actually necessary today that we have today a serious conversation on democracy. When I look at my own democracy, I have today a voter turnout which is unprecedented, electoral outcomes which are decisive, electoral processes which are not questioned. We are not one of those countries where after the election somebody goes to arbitrate in court. Okay? We don't have any hanging chads either. And where you actually say, I will sit in judgment over the verdict of voters. Now, my sense of democracy is the voter is supposed to decide. And it worries us because look, we are a country which went through colonialism. We know the dangers of what happens when there is outside interference in whatever guise in your politics. If you do this kind of scaremongering, like millions of people will be deprived of citizenship, it actually does real damage to our societal fabric, because somebody out there believes you, and you don't leave it to accident, by the way, you back it up with an operation. So, you create that kind of fear psychosis, and then you use that to validate your original judgment. So, I do think today between you know, whose democracy, whose globalization, why, you know, the transparency of how global processes work. These are real issues which need to be debated.